Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining the class today. We are talking about contract day two. Again, I'm Albert Zimbaco, and I will be doing the course for you to help you out here. This class of contract day two has to do with the addendums that go together with the offer for the sale that you're sending. Okay, now all of these here from yesterday's class that we saw all the as is residential contract, you'll notice that number 19 has a bunch of addendas and additional terms. Okay, these addendums are based on the type of sale that you're doing. So there's obviously different types of sales. There's a sale for a single family home. There's a sale for a single family home that's within an association. There's a sale for condos. There's a sale that will have an FHA loan. There's short sales. There are sales that are contingent upon other things happening before they actually close. So these addendas actually help in creating what type of offer you're going to send. Okay, so we're going to start off here with A. First thing I want you all to notice is that each addendum has a letter next to it, going from A all the way through Z. And once the Z finishes, it starts AA, BB, CC. Okay. There are some that say reserved on it. Okay. And the ones that say reserved really are just empty slots in case at any point in time the Association of Realtors and the Florida Bar of Lawyers, of Attorneys, wants to add a new document. Okay. So the ones that say reserved, you don't have to worry about. We're going to be working with about 30 different ones here. Okay. Addendums. Plus, I'm going to also show you some other addendums that you'll use during the process of the offer itself, or in the sense of during the process of when you're under contract, right? So things such as regular addendums and extension addendums, things like that, which you should use if you see that you are falling within a time frame that's too close to the end. Okay, so we're going to start off with condominium rider, which is letter A. Now, the way you search for it is, if I'm just going to keep the contract over here, and this is our search field, right? In the same file that you are working on with your client, you're going to click to where it says add blank forms. And then you're going to search here for condo, okay? Oh, sorry. Don't press add transaction, just press enter. When you press enter, it's going to give you all the documents that have the word condo on it. Okay, see condo, 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 condominium, condominium. How you know it is the exact document is by the letter that's in front of it. So condominium rider, letter A. You'll notice here, this one says condominium rider, letter A. Okay, so all of them will have the letter in front of it so that you can select the correct one. All right. So this is the condominium rider. You're going to use this rider whenever you are purchasing a condo or within a condo association. Okay, you'll know if it's a condo because in the actual legal description it will say the word condo. Okay, even if it's an apartment, most of the times it'll say condo on it. Okay, and they'll be in a condo association, condominium association. So you'll notice it'll automatically put the information, right, that we have for that file into the document. The only thing you need to do is fill out the rest of the document, okay? So number one talks about a condominium association approval. As we all know, whenever there's an association, we do need to get association approval for the buyer or the tenant in order for them to live in the property. So this first one is saying the association approval of buyer is, you have to check off, is required in order for this contract to go through. If the association doesn't approve the client, the contract is dead. Okay, the association has to approve the client. Okay, the contract is contingent upon the buyer being approved by the association no later than 5 days prior to closing. Okay, which means if we have this offer approved, we need to turn in documents to the association as quickly as possible so that the association has enough time to approve our client 5 days prior to closing. Okay. And then within 5 days of getting the offer approved, the seller needs to initiate the approval process with the association, and the buyer has to apply for the approval. Okay, so within 5 days of accepting this offer, the seller needs to contact the association and say, hey, I'm selling my property. I have a contract already, and the person should be going in to do the application. Okay, so that's what that first area says. Okay, the second area is right of first refusal. The right of first refusal only lies upon the owner of the property. It does not lie upon the association, and it does not lie upon the members of the association. Therefore, these two are always going to be does not have a right of first refusal, and the members of the association do not have a right. Okay, so neither of these two have a right of first refusal. First refusal right is only the owner. Okay, and then buyer and seller shall within 5 days or 10 days if you want, but 5 days is okay. Notice if you leave it blank, it'll automatically be 5 days. Sign and deliver documents required as a condition precedent to the exercise of the right, and shall use diligent effort to submit and process the matter with the association and members, including personal appearances. Right? So basically within 5 days, we should be doing the application process. Okay? So everything's 5 days. 5 days prior to closing, we need to be approved. 5 days of receiving the offer and being accepted, the seller needs to notify the association that they're selling the property. And within 5 days, we should also be putting in an application with the association. Okay. Some people like to put 7 days, others like to put 10 days. It's okay as long as it's within the first couple days of this offer being accepted. Okay. Number 3 talks about fees and assessments, right? So we know that every association has a monthly association fee, okay? You'll notice there are 3 areas here for fees, okay? The first area is actually the monthly fee, okay? The monthly association fee goes in the first area, and you check off monthly, or however it is that association fee is paid. It could be annually, it could be quarterly, it could be semi-annually. So however it's paid, you're going to put that first one here, and you're going to check off the box that coordinates with that, okay? The second one talks about association assessments, okay? These are assessments that the association applies on owners of the property. It's possible we don't know if there's an assessment, but we will find out if there's an assessment once we do the application, once the owner sends us the documentation for the association, including what type of assessment there is, right? So all these things we will find out. But if offhand you know what the assessment is, and the listing agent tells you, hey, there's an assessment of $120 per month for the next 2 years, right? Then here you're going to put 120, and you're going to check off monthly. Okay. If you don't know, or there isn't any, don't put anything there. Okay. Then the third one is if you have to pay any money towards the recreation areas. There are some condominiums. Usually there's some in Brickell, Coral Gables, right? Those high-end areas that require you to make a deposit for the association while you live there, and that deposit will be for the reasons of maintaining the building, right? So give me a second. Sorry. So if there is a deposit that needs to be made, at that point you're gonna put here whatever the fee is. Okay, if it's a $1,000 deposit, you're just gonna put $1,000 annually, right? But this is so everybody's aware of the fees that need to go. So again, first one is actual association fee. Second one is any special assessment that the association has placed. And the third one is if there's any rental fee or recreational fee for the association. Okay. If there isn't any, you don't have to put anything here. Okay. And then the boxes are based on when you have to pay them. Okay. Then you're going to come down here It's going to talk about the assessments levied by the association, right? And here's special assessments. If you know there's a special assessment, you're going to write here what the special assessment is. If you don't know about a special assessment, you don't have to write anything here. The other listing agent, when they receive this, if there is one, they will write something here, and we need to initial it because it's a change. Okay, if there is a special assessment that exists, okay, since on the contract we put that the seller needs to pay everything before closing, here we're going to select seller as well, okay, because it says if seller is checked, seller shall pay the assessment in full prior to time of closing, okay. If there's any sort of litigation in the association, meaning somebody is suing the association for any reason, they will have to place that here. Okay, so we're aware that there is some sort of legal case against the association. If there is no legal case, then there's nothing that needs to be placed here. Okay.
Excuse me, Albert.
Yes.
Si hay un litigation con la asociación y otro tenants, do you how do you get that information from the association? You have to meet with the el owner, el director de la asociación.
The association will tell you, or the listing agent will tell you, but someone has to let you know.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then the non-developer disclosure just basically says that the one we should check off is B, which says that the agreement is voidable by the buyer once they receive written notice or written documentation of the association documentation, right? The bylaws, who the what the budget is for the year, who the association representatives are, the articles of incorporation, all that information needs to be given to the buyer. And then once the buyer has that information, they have 3 days, okay, to decide if they want to continue with the purchase or not. So this is like another sort of right to cancel for your buyer, okay? If everything is okay and they're happy with everything after those 3 days, they cannot cancel because of the association, okay? So here we're asking for the documentations, okay? The same documentations that we have those 3 days to review in order to see if we want to continue with the property or the buyer wants to continue. Here they're going to check off requests, that the buyer does request copies of the condominium documents. Those condominium documents do cost money, okay? And the seller needs to pay for those documentations if they do not have a copy of it. If they have a copy of it, they can go ahead and make a copy and give it to the new buyer without any payment. But if the seller does have to go to the association and pay for those documents, it says here, if we decide we want to cancel at that point, because of the association, the buyer immediately returns documents to the seller, and or they have to reimburse the seller for the cost of the documents. So if the documents, we decide to keep them, they have to reimburse the seller. If they don't want to go through with the purchase, they need to return all the documents to the seller, and then they don't have to pay anything. But these are fees that the seller needs to pay, okay? Buyer's receipt of documents, once those documents are received by the buyer, the selling agent will check this off and place the date on which they gave them the documentation. And this is in order for us to be aware that everybody has received what needed to be received. Okay. Common elements parking. Here it's going to say what type of parking is included in this condo. As you know, a lot of condos only give one parking space as a requirement or as a assigned parking space. Okay. So here you're going to put parking spaces. If there's one assigned, you're going to put one. Okay. If there's a garage, and a garage means an actual enclosed area where you're going to park the car underneath it. Okay, that doesn't mean that because there's one assigned parking space, there's a garage. One parking space assigned here. If the parking space is inside of the garage, you're going to put one garage. If there's no garage, you're going to put 0 garages. Okay, and here I also like to put guest parking and amenities. Okay, just to let the buyer know, hey, if you have 2 cars and you have one parking space assigned, that's yours. That's perfect. You can park one car there. But there's also guest parking, which you are allowed to use, right? And the amenities of the association. Okay. While you're doing inspections on the property, it's possible that the inspector or anybody that comes in to do the appraisal does have to go onto the property of the condo association. So this is basically saying that if and when you do any inspections, okay, there is some sort of damage that is caused due to those inspections, the seller is responsible for those damages, and the seller at that point can go after the buyer to recover those damage fees. Okay, that's for any property within the condominium. So usually doesn't happen, but it is there to protect everybody, right? And that is the condo association rider. Okay, so here you only have to initial it once, buyer initials, seller initials, and it goes together with the association. I'm sorry, with the as-is contracts. Okay, any questions on this document? All right, great. Now we're going to go to the homeowners association. The homeowners association is very similar to the condo association rider. It's really the same concept. The only difference is instead of it being separated into 10 different or 12 different areas, it's more of in a paragraph form, right? So I'll show you what I mean by that. So you'll notice this one's, I just put HOA, and here you'll notice the letter B, right? So B, homeowners association. So we're going to click on that one. And here's what I mean. Basically the same exact things, only it is in a paragraph format. Okay, it's only 2 pages as opposed to 3. So here it's going to say what is the name of the community. Okay, you're going to have to put the name of the homeowners association community, whatever it is. And then you'll notice how in the other one it had 3 sections of fees, right? So the first one is the same thing, the amount of the monthly association fee. Okay, and it's going to say 180, and you're going to put per month here. Okay, then the second one is the special assessments. Okay, so here you're going to put whatever the special assessment fee is. If there isn't any, you're going to put 0, and it's per month. And then this next one you'll notice is the obligation to pay rent or land use fees for recreational or other commonly used facilities. So you'll notice it's the same exact thing as the condo one, but it's just in a paragraph format. Okay, so here you're only going to put the fees that are going to be assessed for the association, right? Now, here's the approval part, the same thing as the other one. What this doesn't have is first right of refusal, right? Because this is a homeowners association, and the only person that has right of refusal is the homeowner. So this one is saying the association approval of this transaction of the buyer is required. It already says we are required to get a homeowner's approval. The contract is contingent upon the association approval no later than, same thing, 5 days prior to closing. And then within 5 days of effective date, the seller needs to initiate the process, and the buyer needs to pay an application and related fees as applicable in order to provide the association the ability to apply or to approve the tenant or the buyer. Okay, so you'll notice this is the same exact thing. Now, number 2 is a little different because homeowners association has separate fees, right? There's an application fee that needs to be done. So this app here, this is going to say payment of fees, assessments, and other association charges. Other association charges, correct? It's not the actual monthly fee. The monthly fee we've already placed here in this area. So here we're going to put whatever fees are additional. What is an additional fee for an association? A lot of times it could be the actual application fee. So the application fee could be $100, right? $100 per applicant for application fee to name of association, right? See what I did there? Here you're going to put whatever the additional fees are, okay? Let's say there's an additional fee that they have to pay $50 per car for a parking decal. You're gonna put here $50 per car for a parking decal to the association. So these are going to be fees and things that are given in the initial contribution for the association, and we have to disclose it there, right? And then it goes into B and it talks about special assessments, okay? If there's a special assessment, who is paying for the special assessment? Just like in the contract, we're gonna put that seller is paying for all the special assessment fees, okay? This, if you have the association information or the management company information for the association, you can put that here. If you do not have it, you can leave it blank. The other agent will give you the information. Okay, so this is the homeowners association addendum. Okay, notice same exact thing. Both of them are pretty similar, just a few little changes, but nothing out of this world. Okay, any questions on this one? All right, great. So now we're going to go to the seller financing form. Okay, seller financing is if there is some amount. Oh, sorry. If there is an amount for the purchase of the property that the seller is going to give the buyer in order for them to obtain the purchase. Now, this document isn't used very often, but it can be used usually on transactions that are of very high value. So you could see, hopefully you guys will receive a transaction of, let's say, over $800,000, right? And the buyer is actually approved for 500,000 or 600,000, and they request a seller, I'm sorry, a seller financing of $300,000 to complete the $800,000 transaction, right? So this document right here allows that to happen, okay? It can be sent with the offer if it's been negotiated prior, or it can be sent in order for it to be negotiated with the offer. So it doesn't necessarily need to be what the owner is saying they want. This document can be the offer that the seller, or I'm sorry, that the buyer is willing to give the seller. So, hey, Mr. Seller, I want to buy your property. I have $500,000 approved already, but I'm going to need a $300,000 seller contribution. I'm sorry, seller financing in order to complete. And these are the terms I want for seller financing, right? Not always are they going to be accepted. They may be negotiated, but that's what this document is for, okay? So the first part of it just basically gives you the information of what you need to understand about how to fill this out, okay? The second page is the actual mortgage, okay? My recommendation is to speak to a lender. We don't have the proper information to understand how much money our client can qualify for if there's an additional seller financing loan. Okay, so if we're already speaking with a lender, we need to let them know as well, hey, we're gonna do a seller financing loan with this property. What is the best type of loan that will allow us to get approved for both loans? Even though the seller is the one that is offering this loan, it still acts as money that needs to be paid towards the property. Okay, so it will still fall within the ranges of Dodd-Frank, which is what credit companies and loan companies use in order to make sure the loan is regulated correctly. Okay, so here it's going to ask you, seller agrees to hold a note, right? It could be a first one or a second mortgage in the amount of 300,000, and hey, the interest rate I want is 3.5. Okay, and this is the way it's going to be. It's going to be a fully amortized loan for a term of 30 years, right? It's going to be an interest-only mortgage loan for a term of 15 years or 10 years or 5 years, depending on what they want. It's going to be a balloon mortgage for a term of blank years. It's going to be an adjustable rate mortgage for a term of blank years, right? So we don't know the financial aspect of what these loans or these different types of loans and how they can affect the buyer, which is why I say we should sit down with a lender and make sure that we are choosing the best type of loan for the buyer in order for it not to affect that first mortgage, right? And still have the ability to buy the property with both mortgages. Okay, so I always recommend sit down with a lender if this is a document that you're going to use. It is not very common that you use this again, but if you are going to be selling luxury properties or high worth properties or values, which we all hope you do, um, then this is something that you're going to become very familiar with. Okay. Then down here, it's going to ask you, how do you want the payments to be made? Are they going to be made monthly? Are they going to be made quarterly? Are they going to be annual payments, right? And then here is how the interest rate is going to be, right? So if it's an adjustable rate or anything like that, then here it's going to say what the interest rate is, how it's going to change, so on and so forth. Okay, so again, not going to be used very often, but we do have the ability to offer it to our clients if they are high net worth properties that are going to be purchased. Okay. Any questions on this one specifically? Okay, great. So we're going to talk about mortgage assumption. Mortgage assumption is pretty similar to that seller financing. The difference is you're actually assuming the mortgage of the property that you're buying. Okay. So the mortgage assumption, the difference is that instead of the actual owner approving or signing off on this, which they will, this also needs to go to the bank. And the bank needs to sign off on it as well. What this is saying is that the property is encumbered by an existing mortgage, okay? And the mortgage is in the amount of, the seller will tell you what the amount is, right? And it has a variable or a fixed interest rate of X amount of money, let's say 3.75, right? At the time of title transfer, some of the fixed interest may subject to increase, okay? If it's increased, the rate shall not exceed 0.5% annually, okay? This is what the bank needs to approve, okay? The bank is going to say, okay, we're going to approve the mortgage, the same exact mortgage, and the amount being transferred over to you, but because we're doing this transfer, there may be some fees, and that's going to increase the interest rate, okay? But we are telling the bank we don't want it to increase more than this amount per year, okay? If it does, we don't want the loan, okay? But the loan company or the mortgage company also has the ability to say, I'm sorry, but we're not going to give you a transfer of this mortgage because we're going to charge more money. And that's not what we agree upon, right? So this one, again, is very rarely used. It's going to be used in instances where maybe you're taking over the mortgage of a family member, or a family member no longer wants to live in the property or does want to live in the property but cannot afford the mortgage. And so you are going to buy the property and assume their mortgage. Usually what happens and when you're going to use this. Okay. But again, not very common. Just letting you know, we do have that option if at any point in time you do come upon that. Okay. Any questions on this one? Great. All right, now we're going to move into FHA and VA financing. Okay, this is a document that you will use very often. Okay. The FHA loan is a loan that many people use. It has a low down payment, right? 3.5%. And if people qualify for it, you can purchase a house with an FHA loan. Okay. This document lets everybody in the purchase know that the property is going to be encumbered by an FHA loan. Okay. this FHA loan has to amount to the amount of the appraisal for the property. So if you're purchasing a property or you're putting in an offer for the property for $350,000, this document needs to go together with it if it's an FHA loan. And here you're going to check off FHA financing and you're going to put $350,000. Okay? That means what you're telling the seller here is, hey, because this is an FHA loan, they will be doing an appraisal. And if the appraisal does not come in at $350,000, they will automatically deny the FHA loan, and the client, or the buyer in this case, is able to get out of the contract. So it actually acts as an appraisal contingency, okay? But it's based off FHA loan, okay? The fees and everything, you don't have to worry about putting anything. This is the most important part of this document, okay? Now, it also says that the purchaser has the privilege and the option of proceeding with the purchase of the property without regards to the amount of the appraised valuation, okay? Meaning, if the appraisal comes in at $348,000, okay? The purchaser has the ability to speak to the seller and say, hey, let's lower the price to $348,000. Or the purchaser has the ability to say, I'm okay with $348,000. Let's do the loan, tells the bank, let's do the loan for the $348,000, and I will pay the difference of those $2,000. So this is just making sure that this FHA loan is going to be for the amount of the appraisal of the property, okay? But the buyer has the option to continue with this type of loan if the appraisal doesn't hit the amount that it's supposed to hit, or the buyer has the ability to say, I no longer want the property because it did not hit the appraisal amount that I needed it to hit. Either we change the price on it or I'm out, right? So that's what this document allows you to do. If the property will be purchased with a VA financing, you're going to check off the VA one, okay? Not the FHA one, just the VA one. And we all know there's no number here for appraisal is because FHA is 100, I'm sorry, VA is 100% financing. So whatever the offer is, that's what the price has to be, right? And that's the only thing you need for this document, okay? They all sign and allow and understand that the property will be encumbered by an FHA loan, okay? Any questions on this document?
Yes, I have a question. If the appraisal on the FHA financing comes in higher, then can the buyer then pay the difference, or he can't in this case?
What do you mean if the appraisal comes in higher?
The appraisal came in at $355,000.
Then they have $5,000 of equity in the property.
They don't. Okay. They have to come in with that $5,000 extra?
Why would they have to come in? The appraisal is saying how much the house is worth.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I'm sorry. I'm confused.
Yeah. The appraisal is saying how much the house is worth. So
Right.
if it comes in at $355,000, the bank is happy because they only have to worry about $350,000.
That's right. Okay. I don't know what I'm thinking. Sorry.
It's okay. It happens. Numbers can make you go crazy. Not that you're crazy. I'm just saying. Anything else? Okay, awesome. All right, moving on to the appraisal contingency. I just spoke about appraisal contingency. This appraisal contingency, though, this one is specifically for conventional loans, okay? Conventional loans or adjusted rate mortgages, balloon mortgages, anything of that is not an FHA loan, you may get an appraisal contingency. Okay, there are some listings where you will read appraisal contingency not allowed, right? Or something to that effect, right? Or make offer without appraisal contingency. Okay. Basically, what this does is it allows the buyer of the property to tell the seller, hey, I'm going to place an offer on your property, but the appraisal of the property needs to come in at the price I want it to. If it does not come in at the price I want it to, then I have the option to get out of the contract, or we can negotiate the price. Okay, now this is completely different than a loan contingency. Okay, the loan contingency says that, hey, in 30 days, I need to make sure that the buyer is approved. Okay, so I like to give an example so you guys can see it. Here's a calculator, right? The property is selling. You guys can write this down and follow along if you want. The property is selling for $250,000, right? The buyer is giving a 10% down, meaning the bank is only required to loan 90% of the value, okay? Which means the bank is only required 250 minus 25. Okay? The bank is only required to pay $225,000. Okay? The other $25,000 will be paid by the buyer as a down payment. Everybody follow along so far? Great. We offered $250,000. The appraisal comes in at $240,000. This is a question I have for everybody right now. The appraisal came in at $240,000. With the loan contingency, is the contract still in effect? Waiting for an answer. Okay. Because of the loan contingency, the contract is still in effect because the bank only needs to pay $225,000. And the appraisal came in at $240,000, which means there is enough money to cover the amount that the bank has to pay. Everybody follow along? Okay. Now, with the appraisal contingency, we are telling the seller, we are going to do an appraisal 10 days at least prior to closing, okay? And the value needs to be $250,000. If it is not $250,000, regardless of the loan contingency, I will be able to pull out of this contract. Okay, so now if the appraisal came in at $240,000, because I have this appraisal contingency saying it needs to be $250,000, I can leave the contract. It doesn't matter that the bank is only having to pay $225,000. I'm telling the seller here that my loan doesn't matter. What matters is that I want to make sure that the property is worth this much money in order for me to buy it. Does everybody understand that concept? You guys hear me? Is everybody hearing me?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We
Yes,
understand.
yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you, guys. So that is what the appraisal contingency does here, okay? It allows your buyer to tell the seller, I'm purchasing this property for you, or I'm going to make an offer to purchase this property for you, but it needs to, no matter what, come in at $250,000. And if it does not, I have the ability to terminate this contract and get the money back for my deposit. Okay, so this is a nice, a good way to protect our buyers from making sure that they purchase a property that is worth the money that they're offering. Okay. And it avoids us from having to worry about the loan contingency. Any questions on this document?
No.
Great, thank you. Okay, so moving on, we're gonna get now to the short sale document, okay? Short sales, you guys have probably noticed in some listings, whenever you do a search, it'll say the word short sale. And let me see if I can show you guys very quickly. So let's go here to where it says short sale. Okay. All right. So I'm just gonna click on a property. Okay, here's a property. It's a short sale. You'll notice the listing has the word short sale on it, and it'll say yes. Okay, some of them will say yes, unapproved. Okay, what does that mean? It means that this property is selling as a short sale, but it has not been approved by the bank yet. Okay, others will say yes, approved. Let's see if we can find one. Okay, see this one? Says yes, approved. Okay, that means that the bank, all right, has already approved a price range of 775 to 799 on this property. So if there's an offer made between this range, see how it says range price? If there's an offer made within the range of 775 and 799, the short sale will be approved. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean your offer is going to get approved, because you may offer 780 and somebody else might come in at 789, and they're obviously going to take the higher one. But it's saying if you come in within this range, it's a guarantee that the bank is going to approve the short sale. Okay, when it says unapproved, that means that we're trying to sell it at this amount, but we still need to go to the bank in order to get the approval for the short sale. Okay, that being said, this is the short sale documentation. Okay, and it basically says that we understand that the approval of the seller's lender are required for the approval of this short sale. Okay, so number 2 is saying the application for approval of short sale. Once we send this offer and the seller agrees, the seller has to send it to the bank within 10 days of the effective date of the contract in order for the bank to be able to approve this short sale. Okay? The deadline, if you go here, that the status of the short sale application, seller needs to authorize the lender and provide buyer information of the status of the application moving forward. So they can't just say, okay, thank you, I'm going to send this to the bank, and not tell us what's going on. They have to give us the information of what's happening with that application of short sale. Number 4 is saying this is the deadline that we, as the buyer, are giving the seller in order to give us an answer. Here, if we leave it blank, it says 90 days. Obviously, that's something you can discuss with the seller. The seller may be like, listen, we don't have it approved, but we've already spoken to the bank, and we know that they're going to approve an amount. We just haven't gotten the documentation because we haven't had any offers. What be it, right? But if they tell you we can get that approval in 60 days, we put 60 days here. And that means that we have 2 months, or the seller has 2 months to obtain the short sale approval from the bank. Okay? That being said, number 6 talks about the closing date. And it says that the closing date for us on this property will be on or before 45 days after the buyer receives the short sale approval from the bank. So a short sale could take anywhere from 3 to 4 months to close, because it needs to go through the bank. The bank needs to approve. The bank has the ability to counteroffer. The counteroffer needs to be accepted. Then the document sent back to the bank. So all that process needs to happen with the bank first before we can close on the property. And this document is saying owner has 10 days to turn it into the bank, 60 days to obtain an approval for the offer that we are giving. And then once the approval is obtained by the bank, we will be able to close on or before 45 days of that bank approval. Does everybody understand this document? The second page of it allows us to tell the seller, hey, you can accept backup offers or you cannot accept backup offers. I don't like to place the seller in a position where, you know, they're stuck. This, not only that, if we tell them you cannot accept backup offers, you're kind of sticking your client on against a wall as well, right? You're telling your buyer, hey, we're going to make this offer. We're going to tell them they cannot accept any backup offers. But at that point, you cannot search for any other properties either. Because if we're telling them this is the house we want and you can't accept a backup offer, then we can't come later and say, hey, we don't want this property anymore if you find another property. So I would always, sellers' right to accept backup offers, okay? If they accept our offer, we are first position in line. So if there's any way that they receive a better backup offer, they have to let us know. And they can't just kick our offer out of the table, okay? So here you just select that it's okay for them to take backup offers, and then, you know, they can go through the process of getting the approval from the bank. Any questions on this document? Good.
No,
All
it's
right,
clear.
moving on, we're gonna go to the homeowners and flood insurance document, okay? So this homeowners and flood insurance document, a lot of people will say that it means that the buyer needs to obtain homeowners and flood insurance. Not necessarily. What this document states is kind of like another way for the buyer to get out of the contract, believe it or not. What it states is that on this property, the homeowner or the new buyer needs to obtain homeowners insurance and possibly flood insurance as well if the property is in a flood zone, okay? But what it's saying in actuality is if the buyer is unable to obtain a homeowner's insurance for this amount by the day we close, or by, you know, here it says if you leave it blank earlier than 30 days of effective date or 10 days prior to closing, right? If you leave it blank. So if the new buyer cannot obtain homeowner's insurance in this amount or cannot obtain flood insurance in this amount, right? We can check off both boxes. So if they cannot obtain, I'm sorry, this should be over here. If they cannot obtain homeowners insurance for this amount, or they cannot obtain flood insurance for this amount, the buyer has the ability to get out of the contract and get their money back. Okay, so this document doesn't necessarily mean that homeowners insurance is needed or flood insurance is needed. It is a get out of the contract document for your buyer stating if this insurance cannot be obtained at this price, we no longer want the property and we can get our money back. Okay, why is this here? It's really here for the purposes of the loan, right? There are loans that FHA loans, for instance, and, you know, some low interest or low down payment conventional loans, 3%, 5%, that the client is very tight with the amount of money they have or the amount of loan to value that they can receive from the bank. That being the case, if their insurance is too high, they no longer qualify for the loan. Or if there's flood insurance is too high, the loan may not qualify. So this allows them to say, the lender is going to say, okay, we can give you $300,000 in cash, but only if we can find an insurance that is less than $3,000 a year. If the insurances are more than $3,000 a year, you're not going to qualify on this loan because this loan is an escrowed loan, meaning you have to pay taxes and insurance together with the payment. So unless we can find an insurance that's less than this amount of money, you do not qualify for the loan. So that is what this document does. It actually helps the buyer, gives the buyer another way to get out of the contract if they do not find an insurance below the value that they're looking for. Now, obviously, this has to be realistic, right, guys? Like, we can't put a homeowner's insurance and it needs to be less than $1,000 a year. That is not realistic. You're never going to find that, right? It's got to be a realistic price in order for the seller to sign this and agree to this disclosure. Okay? Any questions on this disclosure? Awesome. All right, we're going to move along a little quicker now. Mostly those first ones that I said are possibly the longest ones and the most important. You'll notice I is reserved, so we don't have to worry about that one. J is interest-bearing account. This is used, this is used if the money that's going into escrow will be in an interest-bearing account, okay? Okay, and our company does have an escrow account, but it is not an interest-bearing account. But if your buyer wants to put money that's in escrow into an interest-bearing account, we absolutely can. Okay, we would have to disclose that to the broker, and the broker would have to find a bank that has an interest escrow account and open that for the client. Will brokers do that? Yes, depending on, you know, what it's worth to them, right? What it's worth to the company. So if it's a $200,000 purchase and the escrow that they're going to put is $1,000 in escrow, the brokerage is not going to look for an interest-bearing account for $1,000, right? Regardless, they don't get the interest. The brokers don't make the interest on the account, but they do have to pay for this account to be opened, right? Banks don't offer these types of accounts for free. They offer them with a monthly fee. So if the interest on this $1,000 is going to be $2, it's not going to be worth it for the brokerage. Now, when is this going to be worth it? Let's say you have a client that is about to purchase a $10 million warehouse, right? And they are going to deposit $2 million as escrow. But your client is telling you, hey, I do not want to hold those $2 million in an account that's not going to earn me any interest. I want that money to earn me interest while we're under contract, and I want that interest to go towards the closing of this deal. Now it makes sense. Now your company is going to say, okay, we don't want to lose this deal, right? Or the title company is going to say, we don't want to lose this deal. So let's find a bank. Let's open an account that's going to be an interest-bearing account. And we're going to put the $2 million into that account. And now we have to fill out this document that says the money that's going to be in escrow is going to be held at X institution, the name of the bank, okay? And all accrued interest to be paid to buyer at closing, meaning the buyer is going to get all the interest, okay? The deposit will accrue interest from the date that the institution receives the money, and it will be credited through the date that the money is taken out of the account, okay? If the account costs any fees, if the account has any fees that are incurred, the escrow agent is authorized to deduct whatever the fee is as a service charge from the earned interest before distributing the funds. So if this bank account costs $20 a month to maintain, and we understand that this escrow will be in there for, let's say, 3 months, because it's a large deal, right? Then we know that $60 is going to be charged on this account. So we're going to say here, we can deduct $60 from the interest that is earned. That $2 million may earn, I don't know, $1,000 or maybe $3,000 within those 3 months, right? But we're allowed to take out $60 and transfer the rest to closing costs towards the buyer. Okay? That's what this document states. Any questions on this document?
Nope.
Great. Okay, so K and L reserved, we don't have to worry about it there. Now we get into defective drywall. Okay, defective drywall, for those of you that may not know, a while back ago, within the years of 2000 and 2006, okay, remember those dates, 2000 and 2006, there was Chinese drywall that was sent to the United States in order to build properties. There were a lot of properties that were affected, some in Homestead, some up in Broward, a few up north, Florida. So there are properties that it could be possible there was defective drywall installed. Now, we don't know that for sure, but we know that it happened during the year 2000 and 2006. So if you're ever putting in an offer for a property of a house or a townhouse or a condo that was built between the year 2000 and 2006, this addendum needs to go with the offer. And it basically says that the seller has no knowledge, okay, of the property having Chinese drywall or defective drywall. Sorry, you can't say Chinese because it is discriminatory. It says that the owner has no knowledge of defective drywall being used in the property. Could be true, but we don't know. So how do we find out? The buyer of the property needs to get an inspector to go and inspect the drywall. Okay, this is not the normal inspection that we do when we're purchasing a property. This is a special type of inspection with a professional that is of drywall. And they will go in and they will cut holes inside certain sections of the house to verify if that drywall is defective or not. Okay, that is a completely separate inspection, and your buyer needs to pay for that if they want to know for sure. So this document here gives you two options. Buyer, at buyer's expense, will have a home inspector, licensed contractor, or other licensed professional within X date of effective date do an inspection or a risk assessment on the presence of defective drywall. Okay, if it reveals damage to the property resulting from the defective drywall and the cost to remove or replace drywall exceeds X amount of money, the buyer may cancel this contract with written notice to the seller on or before the expiration of the drywall inspection period. Meaning, if we have 10 days to do a drywall inspection, and the inspector comes in and he does the inspection and he says, okay, look, the whole house doesn't have it, but this side of the house does have it, this wall. You're gonna have to remove this wall and put up new drywall, and this is gonna cost you $2,000. If you leave it blank, it's gonna be $500 automatically. So now that we know that that part of the house has defective drywall and it's going to cost $2,000 to fix, now we're telling the seller, hey, we're not about to spend $2,000 on this property to fix the drywall. So we want out of the contract, and this is the reason why we have proof that it's defective drywall, right? Or the buyer can say, I'm not worried about it. I'm not going to do an assessment or an inspection. And then we have to check off this part of the document, and both buyer and seller need to initial saying that the buyer waives the opportunity to do an inspection. If an inspection is done, okay, and the buyer cancels the contract, okay, but there is still damage to the property because of the inspection, let's say there's 5 or 6 holes in the walls now, the buyer needs to pay for those repairs that they did on the walls during the inspection. Okay? And that's what the defective drywall addendum is. Any questions on that?
Yes, I have a question. Is this addendum mandatory now?
It's always
For,
been needed. Always been needed if the property was built between 2000 and 2006.
okay, wow. Because I bought my house, which was built in 2002, and I don't recall this addendum.
It may have been in the contract itself. When you
Okay,
bought the house, did you buy the house using the contracts that we use, or was it a
yeah,
contract that a developer made?
no, I bought it in 2012. So it was one of these Florida bar contracts,
Okay.
but I don't recall that. I don't recall that.
You
But
might want
anyway,
to check your documents. It could have been that you signed it at your closing, and maybe it just wasn't it wasn't explained correctly.
okay, all right,
But by law, yes. If any house is done prior to or between the year of 2000 and 2006, this document needs to be signed. It's possible
okay,
that during your closing, you may have signed it, and there's so many documents that you're signing at closing that you
mhm,
just didn't realize that's what this was.
okay, all right. Thanks.
No problem. Any other questions?
What is the dates again? 2000, 2006?
Yes. Between January 2000 and December of 2006.
Okay, great.
If it
Thank
was
you.
built in 2007, you do not need this.
Thank you.
Now, as far as the buyer now paying for the holes, that's kind of
Right.
messed up. So the company bills then the real estate, or the company that does the inspection bills the buyer?
Correct.
And then how do they do that?
So no, the buyer will have to fix the holes. The entire wall isn't going to come off. If you've ever seen an inspection like this, what they do is they do a hole that's like 2 inches by 2 inches. So it's a small square. It's nothing major. It is something that plaster. If they just plaster over it, it'll cover it.
Mhm.
And that's what they ask is there. If we are doing an inspection and there's a hole in the property, we need to plaster it if we decide we don't want to go forward with the purchase.
Okay.
If we do go forward with the purchase because there was nothing found, then yeah, obviously we're still responsible for closing up those holes. And when we move in or when the client moves in, they can go ahead
They
and
can
patch up
fix
those
it.
holes.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, it's not major holes. It's not like somebody punched a hole through the wall or anything like that. They're relatively small holes, but just enough to get the information that the inspector needs.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. All right, let's move forward. The next one is the coastal construction control line. That is going to be used if you are purchasing or making an offer on a property that is on the coast of one of our oceans, right? You're really not going to find that too much here in Miami because the only thing that's in the coastal area of Miami are like condos and things like that. But these are specifically for homes or townhomes that are like right off the beach, right? You're going to find those um, usually up around Dania Beach, Florida, and up there by Juno Beach, really far up north. Not Dania Beach, Daytona, areas like that that are close to the coast. They do have houses that are very near the coast. What this document states is that you understand, or the buyer understands, that because this property, part of their property is the actual beach, is the sand, they can lose some of their property due to um, rising sea levels, right? Or if it becomes nationally protected waters, right? Let's say you buy a property and it turns out that 1,000 feet from the shore, there was a submarine that sank there from World War I, and it was just recently found, and all of a sudden that area becomes protected by, the museums or national reserves, whatever it is, right? So now technically that area there, you lost it because the government took over it, right? So what this is stating is that if you're purchasing a property that is in that coastal area, if you want to make sure that your property is what it is, you would have to request an affidavit or a survey of that area at the time of deliverance. So you know right away, this is mine, this is not mine, right? What if before purchasing that land, there is turtles, sea turtles that come and nest in front of your house, but you never knew that, right? That's protected land, meaning, you can use it, but technically it's not yours, right? So you want to do a survey to find out if that is happening at this point or if it's not happening at this point, right? That it can happen in the future, absolutely. There's nothing you can do to stop that. But before purchasing the house, if you want to know exactly what is yours and what isn't yours, because you live in the coastal area, then you would request a survey, okay? So this document says that you're looking to request a survey that would be done with the title company, okay? Or you're waiving the right to the survey. The survey is definitely an extra cost for the buyer, but it's only in case that the buyer is interested in knowing if there's any sort of protected land within that property line that's theirs, or up to where does their property line actually go, right? So that is the coastal construction control line. Not going to be used very often. I've been in real estate almost 5 years now, and I've never used it once, except for this class. So
That could probably be applied in the Keys for the people that buy homes that are on the water in the Keys.
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
the Keys is definitely a good place that it could be used. All right, so let's move on and let's go to the installation disclosure. This is another disclosure that you will not use very often, or if at all. It is basically for homes that are up north. Okay, here in Florida, here in Miami-Dade and Broward, all our homes are made with concrete walls, CBC construction. Everything is concrete. Why? Because we are affected by hurricanes. So there are certain building codes that need to be followed because of that. But up north, Pensacola, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, all those areas, they're not as affected by hurricanes as we are down south. So the homes that are built up there have more wood in them. They're more wood-built homes, cabin-like homes, right? And that's to be able to sustain the freezing temperatures that they get in the winter, right? Because they get temperatures in the 15 degrees, 20 degrees, and not all the time, but usually it's very cold up north in Florida. So they have a certain code for insulation that needs to be placed within the interior of the houses. I'm sure if you guys have traveled up north by your car, you've seen houses being built in Orlando and stuff like that, where the exterior of the house really just looks like paper, right? It's like wood and paper. It doesn't look like concrete. And that paper that you see is actually the insulation that is being put around the house. So those houses have certain codes that need to be maintained. And this addendum, we need to send with those houses if we're purchasing up north, so that they can tell us what type of insulation is in interior walls, in the ceiling, in the slope ceiling, in common walls between the garages, and in the exterior walls, what their thickness is, and who the manufacturer is. So this disclosure we're not going to use for any properties here down south in Florida, but you may sell a property in Orlando, or you may sell a property up north in Jacksonville or Pensacola, or places that do require these codes. And at that point, you need to send that with the offer. Okay?
I'm noticing that it says disclosure for new residents. Is it just new residents or
Correct.
resale
New residences.
only? Okay.
Mhm. Insulation has been or will be installed in the new residence as follows. And you can put that there. All right. Lead paint based disclosure. So obviously you guys have, from the real estate exam and from all offers that you've heard, anything built prior to 1978 must have a lead-based paint disclosure. What that is basically letting the clients know sorry, that it is possible that the property may have lead-based paint disclosure. Okay, so here's the document on leases. This disclosure is already included in the actual lease agreement, but on purchases in the offer, it's not included. So if the property was built prior to 1978, you must include it. Okay, and I'm sure you guys have seen this before. Basically, the seller needs to initial here saying that they have no knowledge, or if they do know they have knowledge, right? And if so, the seller has provided records of any reports pertaining to lead-based paint. But we're not going to check this area. What we're going to check is the buyers, because we have the buyer. So we're going to ask the buyer, hey, this property was built before 1978. So you have an opportunity to do a risk assessment on the property to see if that paint still exists, or waive the opportunity. What would you like to do? If they say they want to do an inspection, then you click that here. That is not part of a regular home inspection. That is a separate inspection altogether that the buyer may need to pay an additional cost for. So please let them know that if they decide they want to do a risk assessment for lead-based paint, they will have to pay for that separately. Okay? Or if they say, no, I'm not interested, they can waive the opportunity. Okay? And if so, then they have to initial here. Okay? There is a pamphlet that we can give them. It's called Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. Now, there's a lot of properties, especially in areas such as Coral Gables, maybe West Park, Hialeah, that were built prior to 1978. Chances are that after 50 years, or not 50, 40 years, that lead-based paint has been painted over so many times that it doesn't even have an effect anymore. But you may be working with an investor that's purchasing a property that's been run down, that is under foreclosure, that was built in 1940, and maybe has not had as much work done on it or as much maintenance done on the walls as, say, a modern home, right? Or a home that has been remodeled, right? In those cases, I would recommend your client do a lead-based paint risk assessment, okay? But it's up to your client. Really just let them know, hey, this house was built prior to 1978. It's possible. And here is a pamphlet that explains what that could mean, right? And then you just give everything to your client and they can decide what they want to do, okay? We as agents need to sign off on this document because we have letting everyone know that we have told our client this is possible, okay? So if you do have a house built prior to 1978, this document needs to be initialed by the seller and the buyer, and all the agents need to sign it as well so that they know. Okay?
Do
Any
you know
questions on this?
where we can obtain that pamphlet? Where do we go?
Absolutely. It's right here in Form Simplicity as well. And if you go to add blank forms and just put lead, no, that's not it. There it is. Lead info pamphlet. So when you
Okay,
see
thank
it, yeah, when you see it, there's nothing that needs to be signed. It's just a pamphlet. It's just information, right? And it looks like this. And it says protect your family from lead in your home. And it just basically explains, okay, if you're buying a home built before 1978, this is how it could get into your body. This is how it affects you. Before renting or buying, we must disclose that the property may have lead-based paint. So it's just basically for informational purposes, right? It tells you what health effects could be. So this document would need to go to your buyer with the lead-based paint disclosure, okay? But only if the property was built prior to 1978, okay? If the
Can you
property
please
was
go
built,
back?
I'm sorry?
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
Can you please show us again how did you find the pamphlet,
Yeah.
the flyer?
Yeah. You can write either lead info and it'll come out, or you can write the word pamphlet and it'll come out.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, and somebody else had a question? No? Okay, great. So yeah, prior to 1978, please make sure that those disclosures are sent to your clients and that they sign and initial that page as well, okay? Housing for older persons. There are some properties you're going to purchase that are in an association or a community that is for older persons, 55 and over, or some of them are 62 and over, right? So just put housing for older persons. And now this is going to tell you, it's just one paragraph, and it just says, the buyer acknowledges that the owners association, okay, that the association is for housings for older persons, and that they understand that they are purchasing that property and need to follow the rules and regulations of that association that is only for older persons. And here you select what type of association. Some of them are 55 and older. Some of them are 62 and older. 55 and older is pretty much the norm here in Florida. So you just select that, and then the buyer and the seller needs to initial it, both of them understanding that they are aware that the property they're purchasing is at a HOPA association or community. All right, that one's pretty self-explanatory. Not much to talk about there. The rezoning one is really mostly for developers. Okay, so let's say a developer is purchasing some land or purchasing a house that hasn't been built yet, right? Pre-construction, but they are interested in making sure that they can rezone that land into something they want. Maybe it's a single family residential zone, right? And they want to change it, or they want to know if it's possible to be a duplex zone or a multi-family zone, right? So this document, okay, allows the buyer to go to the zoning department and request that that piece of land be rezoned to what they want, right? Based on city and county ordinances, right? So let's say one of the places that I can most commonly attribute this to is in the area of 157th Avenue and Bird Road. There is a piece of land that is huge, and there are people selling lots there. Those lots are being sold for $22,000, $36,000, $40,000, but the place or the area has not been zoned yet. Okay, they are expecting that area to be zoned residential because it's right next to a road that is full of residential houses. So they expect that area to be residential, but the zoning still has not passed on what that area is going to be. And it's because it's Everglades land and it's protected land, and they want to make sure before they start building there what it's going to turn into. So people are buying lots now in the expectation that it could be residential, right? So this document allows the purchaser or the offer, the person making the offer, to go to the city and the zoning area and say, hey, I want to make sure that this property is going to be residential before I purchase it. And if not, I want to be able to rezone it into residential or rezone it into duplex or rezone it into multifamily. And if the city says, unfortunately, you cannot do that, then this contingency allows the buyer to say, I no longer want this contract. Please return my money to me and I'm out of the contract. I've never used this contingency before. I really don't think that you're going to be using it either. It may be used for, developers that are looking to buy large pieces of land that want to make sure that they can build what they're looking to build on that land. All right. Don't know much about this document in specific, so I don't really like to go too specific on it. Any questions on that? Yeah, I mean, hard to answer questions on this because I'm not very specific with this. So. But it is here. So in case your client is asking you, hey, I want to make sure I can rezone it, you have that contingency there, okay? Lease purchase and lease option, okay? A lot of clients are interested in maybe renting before they buy, and they will say, hey, I'm looking to buy a place, but I want to rent it before I buy. There is an option to do that, okay? Just put lease, and you'll see it here, lease purchase, lease option, okay? This lease purchase and lease option is really something that needs to be done with a lawyer, okay? We have the ability to offer it, offer this contingency or this addendum stating, hey, we are looking to buy this property, right? Here is the as-is contract. But my client wants to lease it before he buys it. So the lease purchase is an actual guarantee that the client is going to lease the property for X amount of time and then will purchase it at the offer that they are giving for the as-is residential contract, okay? There is no change if you select this option, okay? If the person wants to lease it for 2 years and the property value has dropped in 2 years, doesn't matter. They need to purchase it for the amount that the offer is, or vice versa. If the client leases it for 2 years and the price of the property has increased, the seller may not increase the price that is being offered and accepted at the moment. That is the lease purchase. The lease option gives the option to both buyer and seller if they want to buy the property after they lease, okay? So they can lease the property for 2 years, and then after the 2 years, they can look at the balance of the house and say, okay, the house is still worth what I offered, I want to purchase it. Or if the house has lowered in value, the tenant or buyer has the option to say, I no longer want the property because it's not worth what I originally offered. Or the seller can see that it went up in price, and the seller can say, I no longer want to sell the property because it's at a higher value than it was 2 years ago, and I think I can get more. So that is the difference between lease purchase and lease option. If you notice, it says mutually agreeable terms need to be done within 5 days, and it says attorney's fees for preparation of the lease purchase or the lease option agreement shall be paid by, and if they agree upon it, it's okay to split equally. So we cannot physically do a contract for a lease purchase. We can do the as-is residential contract for the offer and include this, and if they accept it, we then have to go to an attorney, and the attorney needs to draw up the actual contract. And that contract will state if there is some money from the rental amount that is going to be going towards the purchase in the future. So let's say they rent the property for $2,000 and the buyer says, I want $500 of those $2,000 to go into an escrow account for the next 2 years, so that way, the date that I'm going to purchase, I've already saved up $12,000, and that will be my down payment. So that has to be done by an attorney, okay? But we do have the writer that we can fill out and for the seller and the buyer to initial and accept, so that it can be done in that sense. Any questions on this addendum?
Yes, can you please clarify? Because I had a phone call I had to answer. My car is now ready. I have to pick it up. The lease option agreement is the one that gives the buyer and the seller a way out if the price changes in the 2-year term?
Correct.
Is that what you said? For
That is
either
correct.
party?
That
Okay,
is correct.
okay,
The lease purchase locks them both in, and they have to purchase at the end of the term, and they have to sell at the end of the term. Period. There is no pulling out of it.
okay.
The lease option gives either one the option to change their mind at the end of the lease term.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so we're almost done, guys. We only have a few more to go, so I'm gonna try and get this done before 12. I think we got like about 25 more minutes. So let's get this started. All right, pre-closing occupancy and post-closing occupancy. I'm gonna do these together. They are actually one and the same. The pre-closing occupancy allows the buyer, only the buyer, to live in the property before they close on the deal, okay? Meaning, if the buyer has to sell their property, okay? So let's say the buyer has another property that they're selling and they need to move out, okay? But their property is going to sell before they purchase this new property. They can fill this out, letting them know that, hey, I would like to move into the property. If you accept, I'd like to move into the property before we close in the property. And if you allow me to, I will pay you rent from the time that I'm there until the time we close. Or I will pay you a deposit from the time I'm there until the time we close. In case there's any damages and we end up not closing, you can use my deposit to repair whatever damages. I've had this. I actually have this situation right now. My mom is selling her house, and we are set to close this week, coming up hopefully. And she has to be out of her house, but we have another property that she needs to move into, and I sent them this pre-closing occupancy, letting them know, hey, my mom's house needs to be sold, but she needs a place to live, so she would like to move into your place that she's buying before we close on your place, right? The seller agreed, and that's exactly what's going to take place. But this is what you're going to use if your seller needs or your buyer needs a place to live prior to closing, okay? The seller has every right to ask for rent, has every right to ask for a deposit, and depending on whatever they ask for, the buyer must, work together with the seller. Okay. The seller also has the option to say, no, I don't want you moving in until we close, because what guarantee do I have that we're closing? Right. So we want to make sure that, everybody is agreed upon here. And this is for the buyer to move in prior to closing on the property. Okay. A lease agreement may have to be done, or it could just be, don't worry, move in, we're okay. I would recommend, though, a lease agreement be done so that there is written confirmation of why that person is living where they have to be. Could be a condominium, and the condo association could be restricting who's living in the property. And if there's no documentation saying that that person needs to be there, the association could evict them, right? So I would definitely get some sort of written clarification that is happening aside from this right here. Okay. So here it lets you know that a lease must be done. Okay. and the amount of the monthly rent that's going to be paid until the date of tax closing. Okay. So that's the pre-closing occupancy. The post-closing occupancy is the same thing. Only
I
guess
beg to
who has to stay in the property?
I beg to have a
Sorry?
question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It said there on the beginning in the first sentence of the paragraph that it had to be 10 days after the execution of the contract.
Right.
Now, sometimes you don't know until the end, until the last minute, that that circumstance may come up. Can you submit it after like coming to the end and you're almost closing, but you still need something happened that you still need to move in? Can you present it later?
If you know that you're going to purchase the property, or you assume that you're going to purchase the property, right? We obviously don't know what's going to happen on the last day, right? Or the last week of the closing. But if you know that that property you're putting in an offer and that's the one you want to buy, you should have within 10 days of acceptance some form of lease agreement. That lease agreement doesn't have to start right away. It can start in the following month, right? Maybe she doesn't have to move, or he doesn't have to move out of the house right away. Maybe they can move in December, right? So they will do a lease agreement to start for December. If come November 20th there's a problem, then nothing has happened and that lease agreement doesn't have to be fulfilled. You see where I'm getting at?
Yeah, but normally things happen at the last minute that you don't think that you're going to need to ask the seller to let you move in early. That's what I mean, that you don't expect that to happen.
So this is being used if you expect it to happen already.
Okay.
You wouldn't use this if you're not expecting it to happen, right?
Okay.
But if, let's say, okay, give me an example. I want to be where you're talking. Like, I want to get that example.
Well, the person that's buying your home needs to get in sooner because they qualified really quickly and they have a lease, and then the lease, the landlord told them, no, you got to leave. So now they're asking you to move 2 weeks before your closing on your house.
Okay.
Because now your closing on your house got delayed because something happened. A lien came up and they had to pay the lien, and they took a while, and things happened.
Okay.
Something like that.
Then at that point, you will send this addendum.
You can still send it. Okay.
Yes.
That's my question. Okay.
Yes, because you're still under contract. You haven't closed the contract. So if
Right.
you're under contract and this arised, and you speak to the other agent and you say, hey, this is the situation, we'd like to do this. Is it okay? Do you think the seller will agree? We'll pay a rent for whatever time frame. At that point, then you send this, and then a lease agreement needs to be made.
Okay. Even though it's not within the 10 days of the effective date. Okay.
Correct. So
Okay.
you're going to sign this within 10 days of effective date. If you're doing it at the initial offer. But if it arises towards the end of the contract, and you want to send this in, then you can send this in at that point as well.
You can still use it. Okay. All right.
Because
That's what
at that point, then this becomes effective the date that you send it.
Okay. All right. Because that's a little misleading there.
No, I mean, if you're not expecting to do this, you don't need to send it. But if you're already expecting this, you'll know. You'll definitely know, because if your client is telling you, hey, I want to buy a house, but my lease is up next month and I need to find something prior to next month, you already know that this is something that's an option.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Now, if you're buying a property and their lease doesn't expire until 3 months from now, you're not going to need this. Right? That's up to the tenant at that point to say, hey, I bought a house, I want to cancel my contract. You're not going to need this. Right? And I'm sure the tenant isn't going to tell the landlord, hey, I bought a house, I'm going to move out in a month. where the landlord has the ability to say, no, I want you out now. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So this is only going to be honestly used at the initial offer. It's very rarely going to come up in the process of the loan, of the actual contract.
Okay.
Okay, so the next one is the same thing, which is the post-closing occupancy. But if pre-closing occupancy is for the buyer, what do you guys think the post-closing occupancy is for?
Seller.
For the seller, correct.
Yeah.
So the seller is going to sell his house, and vice versa. They're looking to buy another house too, but they cannot move until they close on the other house that they're buying. So they're going to say, hey, I will sell you my house, but I need to stay here for at least 2 months after we close. Because once we close, at that point, I will purchase a home, and then I gotta wait 30 or 45 days till I can close on that house to move out, right? So everybody's in agreement at this point that yes, no problem, we can close on the house, but the buyer now has the ability to accept rent on that time frame, right? So if the buyer agrees and they say no problem, we will purchase your house and you can stay there for 2 months or 3 months, whatever it is, but you need to pay me X amount of money in rent for those 2 months, and you have to pay me a deposit, right? So it works the same way, only this time the buyer's the one that has the rent that's going to be coming to him. Okay. I've seen this before a few times, and I've never. One time I had a buyer ask for rent, and it totally killed the deal because they had 2 offers where this was needed, and my buyer said no problem, they can stay there for 4 months because that was what the owner was asking for, but they have to pay me rent. And the rent was nothing. It was like $1,200 or something. It was very little. But they have to pay me the $1,200 a month plus a deposit while they're there, and if they move out early, they can move out whenever they want. But the other offer said no problem, they can stay there for 4 months, and they only have to give me a deposit. They don't have to pay me a rent. So obviously the seller took the one where he didn't have to pay a rent. Makes sense for him, right? He's selling the house. He doesn't have to worry about rent for 4 months, and he can purchase his other property and live there calmly. So really, you're kind of risking it as a buyer, telling the owner that you want to accept a rent, because there's always somebody that says, sure, no problem, and don't worry about rent. As long as I can buy your house at this price, I'm happy. So it all comes down to how you negotiate that. So pre-closing occupancy for the buyer to live in the property prior to closing, post-closing occupancy for the seller to live in the property after the closing. Okay? With that comes another addendum called the sale of buyer's property. What is that? Exactly what we were talking about. If the buyer of the property needs to sell their property before they can purchase, we have this addendum. And this addendum says, hey, me as the buyer, I love your property and I want to purchase your property. But before I purchase your property, I'm going to give you an offer, and this is my offer. But you need to understand that before I purchase your property and before we sit down in the closing table, I need to sell my property first. Okay? And here are the conditions. I am entering into this contract to buy your property, but if the sale of my property does not close by, let's say, November 15th, all right? If I don't close by November 15th, then in 3 days within that date, I can send you a written notice saying I no longer want to buy your property, or I no longer can buy your property. Why is that there? That's there because anything can happen with the property, right? There could be, like like you had mentioned earlier, liens in the property that weren't disclosed before, and now all of a sudden it throws a wrench into the purchase, right? It could be that the loan never went through for the buyer, and now it goes into a problem, right? So I'm telling the other seller, hey, I'm going to put an offer in your house. I'm going to put an escrow deposit. I want to buy your property, but I need to be sure to sell my house by this date. If I do not sell my house by this date, I'm going to let you know within 3 days if I'm going to be able to move forward with your purchase or if I'm not going to be able to move forward with your purchase. Because if I see that the loan for my property is going to go through and everything's going to work out, I will ask you for an extension and I'll still buy the property. But if I see that the buyer no longer qualifies and the house is not going to sell, I'm not going to make you hold on to me as a tenant, I mean, as a contract or a buyer, when you can find somebody else that's going to help you buy that's going to help buy the property from you. Okay, so that's what this is saying. And if you already are under contract, if the buyer is already on the contract, they have to advise the seller, buyer's property is under contract or buyer's property is not under contract yet. And if it is under contract, you're going to tell them that you're going to send them a copy of the contract by X date, right? And obviously it wouldn't be September, because we're past September. So, I'm under contract. If you agree to these terms, by November 1st, I'm going to send you a copy of the contract so you see that everything's good to go, right? But if by November 15th, I do not close, I have 3 days to tell you I want to keep moving forward and I know we're going to close, or I don't think we're going to close, we're going to have a problem, so I'm out of the contract. And at that point, the buyer gets their money back. That's in escrow. Okay? Any questions on this one?
Albert, we used to call that before we would put it in the additional terms section, contingent on the sale of my property. We would have to just write it in.
Correct. You could.
Now they made it an official addendum now. Okay.
That's correct. You can still do that though. In additional terms, you could still put contract is contingent upon buyer selling their property, but you would also have to include this addendum as well.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Almost done here. So now we have the backup contract. Okay. There are going to be times where you are going to make an offer and the agent is going to tell you, hey, we already have an offer on this property that's been accepted, but we are willing to accept yours as a backup offer. Okay. Oops. That's not it. Oh, I gotta put the hyphen. Okay. So this document is the addendum stating that we all understand that this offer that I'm sending you is a backup offer. Okay. If the first offer is terminated and the seller delivers written notice of the termination to the buyer before 5 p.m. on X date, right? Let's say we're sending this offer today, and okay, listen, if by November 20th, okay, you send me notice that that other property has been terminated, you will accept my offer. If by November 20th they have not sent notification that the first offer has been canceled, then at that point this offer is no longer in the backup role. Okay, I don't know how it's no longer effective as a backup role. It just falls off, right? Because if by November 20th they haven't sent you written notification that they are going to cancel that first offer and accept yours, that just means that first offer is still going forward, and that's it. We're no longer part of the equation. Okay, that's what this is saying right here. We accept to be a backup offer up until this date. If come this date you have not notified us that we are now in first position, the contract is null and void. Okay? If there's any deposit that is being made as a backup offer, if we do not receive written notification by the 20th, we can cancel this contract and we can receive our deposit back without any penalty. Okay? So that's the backup contract that will go anytime you know that the offer you're sending is a backup offer. Okay? Now we have the kickout clause. The kickout clause is more for the seller than it is, for the buyer. Okay? What do I mean by that? If there is backup offers, if the seller knows that they're going to accept backup offers, okay, the seller will send this document to all parties making an offer, okay? The kickout clause basically says, hey, Mr. Buyer, we are accepting backup offers, okay? As of the moment, we are accepting your offer to be in first position. But if during the time frame of our contract, we get another offer that is higher than yours, we have the ability to kick you out of first position and accept the higher offer. Unless you put a additional deposit of X amount of money. Let's say 2,500. Okay, it's already here, right? 2,500. So, Mr. Buyer, we're accepting your contract, but please be aware that we are also accepting backup offers. In the chance that we receive an offer that is higher than yours and the owner wants to take advantage of it, we will require you to deposit an additional $2,500 in escrow within 3 days of us letting you know that we received a backup offer. If you decide to put that additional deposit to escrow, we will continue with your offer. But if you decide you do not want to put those additional $2,500, we have the right to cancel your contract, give you your money back, and accept the backup offer instead. That's the kickout clause. It actually protects the seller from being sure that they are receiving their highest and best offer on any listing or any property they're planning to sell. Does everybody understand this one?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool. Not used very often, but definitely a good tool if you're a listing agent and you're trying to sell a property and somebody offers you, below asking price and you're looking at extra offers or you want to get backup offers. This is a good way to put the pressure on that buyer and say, hey, I know you're offering me $400,000, but I see that your pre-approval is for $425,000. So I know you can offer more. I'm asking for $415,000. At this point, I haven't received any $415,000 offers. Yours has been the highest, so we're going to go with yours. But just know, if we do get a higher one, you're going to have to up the ante on the escrow deposit, or we can cancel your contract. So it's a good, save face for your buyer, for your seller. Okay. The seller's attorney approval and the buyer's attorney approval. I'm just going to show you one. Okay. And really, it's the same exact document. Oh, spell that wrong. It's the same exact document. The only difference is the words buyer and seller. That's it. This one says seller's attorney approval. The other one says buyer's attorney approval. And it's the same exact writing. The contract is contingent upon the seller's attorney approving this contract. If the seller's attorney disapproves this contract, then the seller may terminate the contract by delivering notice to the buyer on or before X amount of date, right? And buyer shall be refunded the money, therefore releasing the buyer. So we can accept the contract as the seller, right? We can accept the contract, but then the contract needs to be sent to an attorney, right? The attorney will review everything and decide if it's worth it for the seller or not. And if they decide it's not worth it, I don't accept, at that point, we need to go back to the buyer and say, hey, seller did not approve, or seller's attorney didn't approve. Unfortunately, we have to cancel the contract. If there's money in deposit, we need to return it to the buyer. Same exact thing for the buyer's attorney. All these words that say seller, though, just say buyer, and it's the same case for the buyer. Buyer makes an offer. Buyer sends that offer to the attorney. Their attorney looks at all the paperwork that the seller is asking for, or all the conditions the seller is asking for. And if the buyer's attorney agrees, we go forward. If the buyer's attorney doesn't agree, we cancel the contract. The buyer gets their money back. Plain and simple. Licensee property interest. This one you guys should know. If the property that you are buying, licensee disclosure of personal interest. Okay. If the property that you are purchasing or selling is your own property and you hold an active or an inactive license, then you will have to send this document with the offer. Okay. X person, Albertson Baco, has an active or inactive real estate license and has a personal interest in the property. Okay. Specify if licensee is related to a party or acting buyer or seller. Okay. I had to do this with my mom's house. I have an active license and I have personal interest in the property because the buyer is my mother or the seller is my mother. So this document needs to go so everybody is aware that I have an active real estate license. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be, taking money from this property, right? From the sale of this house. I'm not benefiting from it, but I'm letting everybody be aware that, hey, I have a license and, this is my mom. And, so everybody is aware there's no problems here. Everybody knows what's going on. Okay. That's for buyer or seller. Then we're going to binding arbitration. Okay. Binding arbitration means if there is ever a dispute on the escrow. If there's ever a dispute on the escrow amount that's being held, it needs to go into first mediation. Okay? Mediation is between both parties and a mediator. They discuss their issues, their differences, what they agree, what they don't agree, and then the mediator decides who should receive that money. If they do not agree with the mediator, then they have to go into arbitration. Arbitration is actual court in front of a judge with lawyers, etc., etc. It's very rare that happens for a $5,000 escrow or anything like that. Can it? Absolutely. Will it? Most likely not. But if they initial this, okay, then all parties have to go to arbitration if they do not agree with the rules or the, acceptance of what the mediator gave them. We are not responsible for lawyer fees. We will not pay lawyer fees for our clients. The clients need to pay their own lawyer fees if this is the route that they want to go. You're not really going to send this right off the bat. This is going to be sent if you see there's a problem with a dispute and it has not been resolved within 10 days. By the 7th or 8th day, go ahead and send this to the buyer or the seller and let them know, hey, we're not resolving this between us. Then we need to go to mediation and we're prepared to go to court if we're not happy with what mediation says. It's kind of a scare tactic, but sometimes it's the only way to get, resolution on something like this. Okay. Hopefully you never have to use it. And then the Miami-Dade County Special Taxing District disclosure, okay? That will be used on any property that you will be purchasing in Miami-Dade County, okay? So, is the beach considered Miami-Dade County? No. Is Fontainebleau considered Miami-Dade County? Yes. Homestead found Miami-Dade County? Yes. So, only in Miami-Dade County properties. Broward, you don't need this disclosure. What this disclosure states is that we understand we're purchasing a property in Miami-Dade County, okay? And it's possible that there is a special tax that may be incurred in that property. This does not mean it's a special assessment. It is a special tax that the county applies on the property. It could be a tax for lighting. It could be a tax for trash. It could be a tax for paving the road. It could be a tax for beautifying a park, right? But it's not a special assessment. It's just a tax. How do you know if the property you're purchasing has that special assessment? This document, we can't write anything. It needs to be written on in e-sign. When you're doing the signatures, you can then write here and edit this page in e-sign. And if for those of you who don't know how to use the Form Simplicity e-sign, I do have a class for it. I teach one each month, but it is recorded and saved in the YouTube channel for Real Estate Empire Group. So if you guys want to learn how to use that, please go to that class. You'll be able to see how to use that function. If not, join me next month, and I'll be able to show you guys how to use that function too, okay? But how to find out if that property has a special tax? If you go to miami-dade.gov, okay, and you put in, and you go to property search, okay, click on property search, and you plug in the address of the property, okay? All right, here's the property, right? Here's the property search of that property that I did. If you come down here to where it says featured online tools, you'll see one that says special taxing district and other non-ad valorem tax assessments, okay? If you click on that, it'll tell you what the special taxes are in that community. It doesn't tell you the price. It doesn't tell you how, does it tell you the price? Oh yeah, it does, sorry. It tells you the price, but that is the taxes annually for these specific items, okay? It's not a special assessment. It is a special taxing that they do, okay? So what you're going to write here when you're able to do it is enter the name of the special taxing district. The special taxing district would be Miami-Dade County and Coral Way Estates. Okay, those are the special taxing districts. And then it'll say enter type of improvements or services. You will write solid waste and lighting district on that second line. Okay, so that is how you fill out this document. And it needs to go with any offer that is in Miami-Dade County, and you have made a search to show that there is a special tax. If you go to Miami-Dade County and there is no special taxing in that specific property that you're looking at, you do not need to send that document. You only need to send it if you go here and you see that there actually is a specific special tax for this property. You also do not need to send it if it's not in Miami-Dade County. Okay? Any questions on this document? This is brand new. This just started maybe a little over a year ago, because when people were doing closings, all of a sudden their taxes started going higher than what was expected, and people were complaining about it. So this is where that comes out of. All right? Those are all the addendums that should go together with your offers. So one of the things I recommend to you guys is to practice on what documentations here need to go with what offers. What I mean is, if you know that you're going to purchase a single family home with an FHA loan that was built in 2001 and is in a homeowners association, and the property is going to be for you, you're going to buy it, right? It's your property. You know that you need to send an as-is residential contract with the FHA addendum, also with the defective drywall addendum, the homeowners association addendum, the interest-bearing, I'm sorry, the special licensee property interest, and if it's a Miami-Dade County, the Miami-Dade County Special Taxing District disclosure. So it's not just the as-is contract. You also have to include an additional 5 addendums with that contract. All these addendums should go together with the offer. Do not just send the offer and then say, I'm going to send the addendums separately, because you may forget to send those assessments. And that may delay the process of closing later because, oh, hey, by the way, we're missing this addendum. Oh, hey, by the way, we're missing this addendum. And to try to get everybody to sign those addendums again before closing could take a longer process. And so we want to make sure that we have all these documents signed by our buyer and sent to the seller so that the seller can sign those too, and we don't have to worry about that in the future. We only have to worry about whatever other addendum needs to be given, okay? And the other addendums that you can use while you are under contract is specifically 2, okay? The extension addendums are if there are any extensions that need to be done on the closing or anything else, right? This extension addendum already gives you the ability to extend closing, financing, which is the loan contingency, the inspection period, the title cure period, the short sale approval deadline period, the feasible study period. This is more for land if you're purchasing any land, and the due diligence period. This is more for commercial if you're doing a commercial thing. So this extension addendum allows you to extend all these different points, okay? And all you need to do is select what it is you're looking to extend and place the date or time frame that you're looking to extend it, okay? It's already done for you. It's very simple to just choose what you're looking for and place whatever time frame you're looking to extend, okay? The other one that you will use is a blank form, and it's called the addendum to contract, okay? And it is it's freezing. Let's try this again. There you go. Addendum to contract. And you'll notice that this page is completely blank. All it has is what number addendum is it? Is this the first addendum? You're going to put first addendum with the effective date of whenever the contract date became effective. Okay. It's going to have the seller, the buyer, the address of the property. And then this is all blank. You can write whatever it is that you're looking to write here as an addendum. Usually it'll start with buyer and seller agree that a credit of $3,000 will be given towards closing costs. Okay. If you have a loan, never ever put that a credit will be given to the buyer in order to fix repairs. Okay. Loans do not like the word repairs. When a loan is being given by the bank, the property needs to be in excellent condition. Therefore, if the seller is giving a credit to the buyer for any sort of repair, your addendum should state seller and buyer agree that a credit of whatever money, say $2,500, will be given to buyer from seller towards closing costs. Okay? Always towards closing costs. Never place the words for the repair of. No. Seller and buyer agree that a credit will be given to buyer from seller towards the closing costs. Right? Or you can shorten that. Seller will credit buyer X amount of money towards closing costs. But always towards closing costs if there's any form of credits. Okay? Anything else that your client is wanting to do or wanting to do and there's no specific addendum, you're going to use this addendum and you're going to write in there what it is. Right? For instance, I had an addendum where the bars of the windows of a property needed to be removed. So I made an addendum stating seller agrees to remove bars from window in order to obtain approval for finance, right? There's no type of addendum for that type of issue. So you use this addendum and you write out exactly what it is that the seller needs to do, okay? Send this to buyer and seller sign and date, and now the addendum becomes effective. Okay, and you can use this form as many times as you want. Just change the addendum to however many addendums you have. All right. As far as addendums go, those are all the addendums that will be used for a purchase agreement. Okay. Do you have any questions on anything that I covered? Is there anything that I did not cover that you guys are interested in knowing more about? I will stay online right now for an additional about 5 to 10 minutes because I need to leave by 12:45. But if you guys have any questions, I will stay online so I can answer as many as I can. And if not, thank you guys very much for joining me today in the class. I hope I was able to clear up some things for you and teach you a few things. And if you have any questions, you can always come back to this as being recorded. We will be putting it in the YouTube page for Real Estate Empire Group. And, just go on in. You can listen to whatever it is you're missing, or you can contact the office, and Janelle would be happy to help you. Somebody in the office will be happy to help you. Okay. Thank you very much, all of you.
I had a question.
Yes.
Okay,